Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. Today I'm hanging out with the crew and a special guest.
Hi, I'm Scott Garibay, and I've been GMing with my kids for quite a while, which is nice.
Nice. And I'm Dave.
I'm Nate.
So today we have Game Master Tips, gaming with kids, and that's why we brought in our friend Scott. As he said,
We brought in a specialist.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll jump in. So I have 4 children. I have 2 girls and 2 boys, and they range from I have a sophomore in college all the way down to a little guy who's in 2nd grade now, and I've gamed with every single one of them. And so I think what we're going to be talking, if we're talking about kids, most of what I'm going to be saying is about middle school and actually elementary school age, because teen is, I think, a whole nother section.
Yeah, once you get to that point, they're almost like real people.
Yeah, I think you could do a separate video just on gaming with teens, but yeah, let's keep it at the elementary level. So now,
12 and under.
Yeah, exactly.
Because my exposure as a GM has only ever been with teenage and up.
Yeah.
I know. Way back in the distance, we've talked about Nerdarchy gaming for more than 20 years. Like, I started gaming with Nerdarchy Ryan when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
And then now that I'm running my game, Dave's son is a teenager and he has joined the game. So like that's my limited exposure. I haven't even done the younger crowd.
So mostly where I've gotten the most experience is with my daughter Tala, and she's 10. Actually, I'm sorry, she's 11 now, and my son Logan, and he's 8. And so we've done many hours on on multiple games, but actually they're all custom. So one of the things is really consider going. So I've tried quite a few, and I would say one. So I tried playing Dungeons and Dragons with them. I actually ran that for quite a few. I would say probably about 4 or 5 sessions until I realized it really wasn't clicking with them. They were playing to humor me, and I was like, "Hey, that's it's really nice, guys, that you're digging this, and that you're trying." And I was like, "Hey, let's dig in on here." And so I tried again, and I launched a Pokemon game with them. So it is a tabletop role playing game based on Pokemon. And I had these books in the house, and I love Pokemon. I don't play video games, but I absolutely love Pokemon, and it's been a shared language with my kids. And so I had these little books, and every single page was a single Pokemon, right? And so I literally took, and I would order these books from Paperback Swap. I would get them for free. I got as many as I could get through them. So these books were in our houses for years, and from when my kid was there.
Not to interrupt, but that's not an RPG game you're talking about.
Right, you're exactly right. So what I did was I ran it with Fate.
Okay.
So I ran Fate style Pokemon game, and so
Core or accelerated?
Accelerated, absolutely accelerated.
Nice.
And in addition to that, I actually added in standard dice on top of the Fate dice, and so it was really custom. And so one of the tips I would say is, traditional role-playing games are extremely challenging for kids. And so I really suggest going custom. What prepared me to get there was a game called Hero Kids. And so I purchased Hero Kids. It's available. It's only $10 or $20, I think, for the PDF. It's done by a guy who did a complete skin, a free skin of Pathfinder, and then he's been iterating. I can't remember the name off the top of the head. Maybe we can get the link in there. But he's excellent. And so I read Hero Kids, and it really told me this is how you break it down for kids. And so I made my own custom role-playing game. You can and so what you can do is you can jump in if you want to play D&D, boil it down to its absolute essence, and really as much as possible you got to try to leave the books behind. And then another tip I would say is play on the floor. That's another thing that was a real breakthrough. We stopped playing at the table, and we actually got down on the carpet, and just turned the TV off and played on the carpet, and it worked. And we got to the point where we were doing.
Oh man, 30... I don't know if my old back can handle that.
Yeah. And we were doing
those chairs, the floor chairs.
Yeah.
With the back.
All right, now we're not all that far away from coming from Philly Games Con. If I remember correctly, Nate and Dave, you guys both had kids at your.
I ran a game with 3 tweens, and I've had some experience with running D&D for my kids, and I want to say these 3 kids were a little more advanced too. They had no problems with the 5e rule system.
Oh, interesting. And how old?
Well, they were 12, right? Both of them were
11, 12,
11,
yeah.
12.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
and they had no problems with it at all, and obviously like you want to kind of like cut back on like any kind of like anything really graphic and explicit. Obviously, you don't want to expose young kids to that kind of stuff, so you want to focus on the story. But even with running for my own kids and stuff, I find the advantage to running with kids is they're not bogged down by the rules.
Yep.
A lot of times, and they're willing to just let their imagination run wild and go, I want to try this or I want to do that. And you don't have to worry about the rules so much, and you shouldn't. As if you're running that game, I really think you should encourage that, and you should never try and stamp that down.
Yeah,
because you're gonna kill the fun, and you'll probably drive them right out of the game, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Flow
that's
with it. I totally agree.
The say yes principle as much as you can. Yeah.
Even to the point where if they start going a certain way with a rule, just map that into your head that that's my rule. I'm going to start to try and use that. So if they understand it as a distinct rule, especially if you're going at the 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 level, I agree with you. Let the rules come later. Let their mastery of the rules build. And rather than, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, you want to color their experience with fun.
Yeah.
You want everything you want to be a positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
Otherwise, especially if they're your kids as opposed to someone else's. It's going to be, you want them to grow into the hobby so that it gets to the point where they're like, oh, I don't want to play games with my dad or my mom anymore. If you constantly like give them that positive reinforcement in the game, I think you can like totally skip that wedge ever being driven in there.
Right.
Yeah. And actually, even to the point where, so I ran with my son Xavier, and he's 20 years old now, right? And one of the things I really realized with him was I was like, I'm going to try to win him over. And that's changed in that I ran quite a few years with him and his best friend and his dad's best friend. We had a really good game, and really he turned his back on RPGs. He's like, this is not my thing, And so one of the things that I would say is, if you can say, I want to show you guys, you don't even have to say this to them, but in your own way, understand, I'm going to show them my hobby. If they walk away from this, that's okay. The more you clutch to, I'm getting you prepped to be a great D&D player forever, probably the worse your chances are of that happening.
So don't be the soccer dad.
Exactly.
Soccer dad.
Just say, this is something that we do. I want to have fun with you guys. Let's share this.
As a general life lesson for parents, anything that you're doing, gaming or not, you can't just assume that they're going to follow in your footsteps.
Yeah.
You guys are crushing my dreams of being the tiger mom of D&D.
Think of the lineage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm in that. I've been breeding that situation. I'm a lifelong, involved in Scouts, and my son, he's 7. He's in Tiger Cubs now, and it was one of those things that I had to gear myself for. He might not like it. Turns out he loves it. He's gotten through most of his first year already. And his fervor is only stronger than when it started, but it could have just been like, nah, this isn't for me.
Yeah. So my youngest son, and I can give you some hope, because when I let it go, I think it was even more successful in that with Tala and Logan, my youngest children, I've run them D&D, a Fate Pokemon game, and a Fate Belisara game. Belisara is a card game based on horses for girls. And I kid you not. And so we ran that, and I ran it for my girl. And for Tala, and Logan, was along, and he kind of managed him.
What did you run with that? Because did you just slip like Pony Finder in there or something?
So actually, yeah, like the apples all did different things and gave different powers to the horses, and literally dresses were a big part of the game, and I had to go to Pinterest and like fashion was it was really and it was really interesting, and I will say this, and so. In many ways, it failed. We only did 3 or 4 sessions, and Tala dug it. Logan just was trying to tear it apart every step of the way. Yeah. But don't be afraid of failure. I find as a parent, like some of your worst failures really bring things out, and so that's why I would say there's still hope. So we ran those 3 games, right? Well, the last game we played was about a month ago, and my son Logan played through 3DS game, Legend of Zelda, Legend of Majora's Mask. And then he came and he said, I'm going to be the DM. I'm going to run you guys through Legend of Majora's Mask. And we ran and so it was me, Tala, my oldest daughter, Autumn, and he ran the game and just totally, jumped into it. No rule book, just dice, roll to see. And he would say 3 up. And we would say, well, what dice? Whichever one you like. Right? And it was so fun. And so, and I was blown away because nothing prompted that, and he just took us through the video game that he had played. And he felt encouraged to do that because he knew it in his mind. So
that's awesome.
Really, yeah, it was really fun. Yeah.
Well, really, a lot of times what I say about this hobby is we're grown-ups playing make-believe.
Yeah.
So why not? Let them run wild with it. Let them do their thing.
Is there anything different between, me saying I'm an elf casting magic with a longsword, versus, the pony game or the Pokemon game, and it's all pretend, it's all make believe.
Yeah, it's all imagery,
Well, actually, I think at the kids level, it is really nice that I actually believe that the game really has transformed into much more than that, and that it really holds a special place. D&D is a major thing to me. I strongly believe that people have no idea how important D&D is going to be in the future. The reason why I say that is D&D is an American icon that hasn't been recognized yet. D&D right now is Marvel in the 60s and the 70s. It's got a niche group. It's a minor property, but I absolutely think it could be a mega billion-dollar property in the future.
Like baseball 100 years ago
Yep,
when it started up.
exactly.
And now they play it in Japan.
Yeah, I think it could be think about it. 1973, that's not that long ago. And Gary Gygax, they're gonna make a statue out of that guy. He could be Disney, I think overall fantasy.
Is there gonna be a Dungeons and Dragon world?
It could absolutely be a franchise. And I think the biggest thing that hasn't made it work is there hasn't been a successful film property. Successful film property, you could see a massive revival.
Oh my God, that's a whole nother
ball. It's a whole
wax.
ballywick.
That's a sore spot.
But yeah, absolutely.
So many great novels and stories, and they put out trash.
All right,
Utter
so
trash.
let's get it back to
back to kids.
Game Master tips, gaming with kids. All of you guys have had, young kids at the table. So what are the key points that GMs need to know?
Be prepared for them to goof off.
Yep.
Okay.
And rein them in without them knowing that you're reining them in. Because you're just going to either shut them down or, they're going to want to do it more.
Well, I think the most important thing is to enjoy it for what it is. Mm-hmm. Like when we were playing 5th edition with my kids, I had spell cards and they're using them. So every time my daughter cast a spell, even though she's never played Pokemon in her life, she would play the spell like a Pokemon card, and vicious mockery, I choose you, or whatever it is. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, that is funny.
And and change the things at time. Like my daughter is in the Monster High dolls. So we modeled her character off of a Monster High doll. I basically built a shifter character before Watson put out the Unearthed Arcana on them.
Nice.
And then built that specific character. And I'm like, well, you want to be a bard because bards are like the rock stars. Yeah. She's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, she likes princesses, so we made it a noble. So, and we totally, let her play her character as a teenager, which she liked, which is a few years older than her. And the first session was her sneaking out to go to a Fae party.
Yeah.
So you just got to figure out what they like and just try and run with it.
Yep. Totally agree.
So what do you think, Scott? Is there anything else?
Yeah, I've got a few more. So I wouldn't run anything for more than 3 or 6 months. Plan on that, and then switch it up. The other thing is, play role-playing games with your kids, and don't stop if it seems like it's failing. Because a lot of times, you're exactly right. Tala and Logan, they would, in the Pokemon game, they'd be like, oh, I wanted to ride the bicycle here. No, I think we should fly our flying Pokemons to this area. And they would really be at each other. And a lot of times I would walk away from a session thinking, they're just kind of at each other's throats, and have a bad feeling about how it went. But then my wife would say, oh, they're really enjoying, she would, just offhand comment, say, they're really enjoying that game. They were talking to me about it today, and so a lot of times, you look at it and you're thinking, oh, I wish that it went better. But their memories of it, and just almost, your only competition is, are you beating whatever, other Netflix show they were going to watch or whatever game they were going to play, and the answer to that is almost 100% yes. So just keep iterating, keep going, choose that next game, jump into it. If they only go 3 or 4 sessions, no problem. Just regroup, try a new game, and it's a lot of fun.
So my goal will be if I'm better to have fun with than Minecraft.
Exactly. That is
that sounds like a losing battle to me.
And, well,
Well, I'm thinking it's going to be a Minecrafty RPG. I think is what it's going to have to be to start.
So would you guys say that running sessions that are more episodic versus the protracted storyline is a better
No 3-year campaigns?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
This way you have a start and an end that they can accept.
Yeah, although I did use Dungeon World's idea of fronts in my games. So I completely agree. Episodic is a really good way to go, and you only need 1 or 2 fronts. So if you're familiar with Dungeon World, take a look at the concept of fronts. They're really quite excellent. There's some concepts in 13th Age that I used as well to just have an overarching. An overarching. These are a set of enemies that are going to be reoccurring, and you can have that in mind, and you can just show different ideas of those dangers encroaching. And sometimes that's another thing. A lot of stuff gets left on the table with kids. A lot of times they won't pick it up, and that's okay. And so just keep iterating and keep going. Yeah.
Cool.
So what about for 5th edition D&D? Like, how would you modify that? Because our base is really a lot of 5e players at this point.
Oh, great point. So what I would do is I would take the character sheet, and the character sheet is it. You don't bring anything else to the table. The character sheet is the whole game, and then you have the full set of dice, right? And then then I would go to the point where this, you have your attribute, you have your weapon, and that's it. I would really leave the books behind for anybody 12 and below. And the reason why is you have more than enough knowledge in your head to know what the boil downs are. And so that's one of the weirdest things is 11 and below, leave the books behind. And I know it's antithesis to everything that everybody, goes by, but generally you already know more than enough of that book, and you're getting them to get those concepts. And you can have the book there, but you let them bring it. And so to the point where if your kids are like, hey, I got this thing that I want to use that I saw in the book, then you use that part of the book that they brought to you.
So spell cards would be important for that if they're playing cleric or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Years ago, in college, I actually ran a game where it was based off of 3-5 rules, and players had their character sheets and this and that. But I all of the the minuscule mechanics I got rid of. There was no damage dice. There was no there was nothing beyond just a D20.
Yeah.
So when people wanted to do something,
are you telling me you're playing Mutants and Masterminds before it was cool?
I don't even want to say that. It was basically just everything would boil down to, okay, I want to do something, and if I knew that they could do it, then it's like, okay, I would just narrate what happens. If it was a chance, they'd roll a D20 and tell me what the result was, and depending upon how good or bad the roll was, I would narrate what happened. So therefore, it was more of a narrative game based off of the mechanics of 3-5 without getting into the details of combat and skills and all this other kind of stuff. It was just a D20, and I thought the campaign was went over really well. So that's something that you could wind up doing with kids, because then they don't have to worry about what die do I use and when. You can just say, okay, well, all right, well, you tried to hit them and you missed. This is what happens. And you could still do the round by round combat if you wanted, but I took that out at all. Combat was honestly just, okay, you do this, bad, you missed, bad stuff happens. You hit, good stuff happens.
So actually, I think you start with a D20 difficulty check, right, and then you add mechanics to that, and you can keep your rule sheet, your rules mechanics on one page, and then add to that after each session where they're getting this new mechanic that's in here, and just keep going. But for 11 below, 900 pages of content isn't going to work.
Yeah. Well, I would even go as far too with your example, Ted, of going with, instead of you as the GM dictating all the narrative, let them.
If something is successful, you can definitely put it into their hands.
Yeah.
And if something's negative, you can let them do it and then maybe expand upon it if it's not.
Well, yeah, because basically, through positive reinforcement, you can kind of just lead them along a little bit with the carrot. And if they might really enjoy describing how they messed up or how they succeeded.
Yeah, and also with kids, a lot of times they're a lot less responsive to the carrot than regular players are. A lot of times, kids, they're going to do what they're going to do, and you have to hold it loosely and realize that story is going to go places you did not expect.
and if you're
okay.
if you're trying to foster the love of the hobby, maybe just accepting the ridiculous is part of what it is to get those new players or those kids engrossed. And then as they mature and the ridiculous isn't as much fun, then they can go into more of what the core is.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is get down at the table, tell a good story, have fun together, and that will foster the love of the hobby. But one of the things I think I really learned with my oldest son is the less you hold on to that that they're going to pick this up, the more successful. Because to tell the truth, my youngest son out of 4 kids was the only one to ever even try to GM, and that came up like a month ago, and Xavier, GM for 12 years, so or actually was in RPGs for 12 years.
That's not really that rare though. Think about how many groups you've been to where no one wants to DM. So
yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, good point.
Yeah. 1 out of 4. That's actually not bad. You have a group of 5 or 6 guys. There might be only 1 or 2 that actually run the game ever.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, so that's a good point.
I think you're ahead of the curve.
There you go.
With 1 and 4.
Yeah.
So.
Exciting.
Lots of key points. Not every kid is gonna get involved. Not every kid's gonna like it. If you guys out there, you have any advice that you want to share for GMing for kids, put it in the comments below. While you're doing that, feel free to click like, share, even subscribe.
You can hang out with us over on nerdarchy.com.
Also check us out on Facebook.
So until next time, stay nerdy.